E aí, tudo bem? Hoje eu vou receber aqui uma lenda dos quadrinhos, uma das maiores lendas com quem eu tive a honra de conversar aqui no canal. O homem que matou a Gwen Stacy, que criou o primeiro clone do Homem-Aranha, que criou uma coisa que a gente adora aqui no Brasil, Esquadrão Atari, criou personagens icônicos como Justiceiro, Nuclear, Poderosa e muito mais. Estou falando aqui do senhor Gerry Conway e vou perguntar para ele se esse ano ele vem para a CCXP. Era para ele ter vindo ano passado, mas infelizmente teve que cancelar. Antes da gente começar, curte o vídeo, se inscreve no canal, clica no sino, pede para receber todas as notificações, joga esse vídeo naquele grupo de WhatsApp da galera. Depois de curtir o vídeo, o YouTube vai perguntar se você quer hypar o vídeo aí. Diz que sim, isso vai ajudar muito a gente. E você já segue a gente no Instagram. HQ você precisa saber, vai lá que tem um conteúdo muito legal. Deixa eu dar as boas-vindas para o meu convidado mais que especial. Mr. Conway, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to HQ Você Precisa Saber.
Hi, Rafael. I'm happy to be on Comics You Gotta Know It.
First of all, I have to ask this because I was very excited to meet you in person last year. You would be at CCXP 2024, but you have to cancel your presence due to health issues. Are you better now? Are you planning to come to CCXP this year?
Yes, I am planning. I am better, more or less, and I will be back, or I will be there to Brazil, to São Paulo, in December. So
Great.
I'm looking forward to that. I was so disappointed. It just broke my heart that I couldn't come. But c'est la vie.
Very good news. Very good news. Let's talk a little about your career. Your first professional work in comics was published when you were 16. Is it true?
No, I sold my first. Oh, no, wait a minute. I guess it would have been printed. No, I sold my first work when I was just turning 16. I was still 15. So yes, my first work was published when I was 16.
It was for DC Comics, right?
DC Comics, yes.
And
I worked for them for 2 years or so. And then I headed over to Marvel.
You were there in person or just sent things to them? They knew you were 16, 15 years old?
Yes, yeah, they did. I mean, they didn't expect me to be as advanced as I was. I mean, I look back at some of the stuff from that era, and I thank my lucky stars that my first editors were artists rather than writers. But I was fairly competent, within a range. And they were looking for new voices at DC and at Marvel. And I was one of the new voices. There was a cadre of us. Len Wein, Mark Wolfman, Denny O'Neil, Steve Skates. We were all newcomers.
As you said, a couple of years later, you went to Marvel. It happened because you became friends with Roy Thomas, right? How did it happen?
Well, there used to be I think, was it weekly or monthly? Friday night, just a coffee clatch at Archie Goodwin's house of creepy and eerie fame, and I base all the younger writers and artists, people like the folks I talked about, and Bernie Wrightson, Jeff Jones, Alan Weiss, Barry Smith, they would come every week. And Roy was one of those regulars. He lived across on the east. Archie lived on the west side, and Roy lived on the east side. So it was a simple cab ride over for him to come over. And we approached each other. We hit it off. He gave me a shot at writing some short suspense stories. That led to my first assignments on some of the B characters, like Iron Man, Submariner, and eventually Daredevil.
As you said, you worked with some characters, but then you got to write Spider-Man, the most important Marvel title, and you were part of one of the most remembered and iconic Marvel stories of all time, the death of Gwen Stacy. To kill Gwen was your first idea. I heard your first idea was to kill Aunt May, is it right?
Actually, that was John Romita's idea, was to kill Aunt May.
Okay.
And I think he was just tired of the old broad. But I still thought that Aunt May served a purpose in the series as an anchor for Peter and a reminder of Uncle Ben. So that he had that moral arrow that centered him, in that book. On the other hand, I had been a fan of Mary Jane since she arrived in Peter's book with Face a Tiger, You've Hit the Jackpot, which for me, she certainly had. And I was bewildered by Stan's decision to bring in Gwen Stacy, who was a really kind of bland, blonde. I mean, she had no real personality, as opposed to Mary Jane, who really presented some interesting opportunities for personality conflicts with Peter. She was a wild woman, in a sense. She was certainly a challenge for Peter, and I just figured that the two of them were an inevitable item. So I had no problem with getting Gwen out of the way. That was my suggestion, and everybody went along with it. It was not controversial in-house because she'd only been in the book for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and by that point, she think of characters who were introduced 5 years ago. You wouldn't cry over them if they left. Betty Brant was the original potential girlfriend, and she was written out as a potential girlfriend.
Yeah.
I didn't figure it was going to be a big deal. Talk about a misstep.
How people reacted to that at that time, the fans? You had a lot of backlash. You were very young, right?
Yeah, I was 18 at maybe 19. 18, I think. It was pretty devastating, for me personally, because the reaction was so negative from all quarters. I went to a New York comic book convention where I was on a panel, and people would get up and criticize me with real hostility. I mean, like I had killed the love of their life. I mean, it was given Gwen, the reality of Gwen's actual personality, it just seemed really over the top. But it has become, a cornerstone because the manner in which she was killed, you know, and the fact that Peter had something to do with it.
You created a character that became a major Marvel character, the Punisher. But I heard you regret creating him, is it true?
I don't exactly regret it. I feel like it's been misused in the last 5 or 6 years, a decade. And I'm so happy. I don't know if you get Netflix down in South
Netflix.
America. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm sorry, not Netflix, Disney Plus.
Yeah. We have.
Yeah. So in the recent reboot of Daredevil Born Again, Marvel basically reclaimed the Punisher skull. You know, I mean, I love that line from Frank Castle. You don't know me. You don't know, you know, what I feel. You know, I mean, that's a huge FU to people wearing it, and it was cops wearing it. You know, so it's even more of an indictment, you know, of the recklessness and the depravity of the misuse of that symbol.
I'm very happy to hear it from you. I hear people saying, change the character because idiots are using the Punisher skull. We don't need to change the character. We need to put him saying, I'm not like you, right?
No,
Yeah.
I think it was cowardice when they did that. You know, they and also it was really ineffective.
For sure.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And you wrote the first clone saga, introduced the Spider-Man clone. When they revamped all that in the 90s, how you felt about it?
I actually wasn't reading Marvel at that point. I only found out about it probably months, if not years after it happened, and I think actually I found out about it when I came back to Spider-Man with Web of Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man, and my editor, Jim Salicrup, said, we have to tie it into the Clone Saga. And I'm like, what is the Clone Saga? He says, well, you know, and he explained it to me, and I was like, so I mean, are you telling me that I wrote the last Spider-Man story? Yeah, because they were saying that Ben Reilly was really Spider-Man all along. Yeah. And I was like, so that means I wrote the last Spider-Man story? It was silly. But, you know, it's been a very effective storyline over the years. And now you have the Scarlet Spider, and, you know, fans love him.
It's being reprinted now here in Brazil. Here it is. And people are buying it. People have real interest on it. And I haven't read it at that time. I'm reading it now. It's not that good, but I prepared my mind for reading it.
they kept, when they saw how successful it was, they kept bringing it along, you know, and embracing it and moving it forward and doing more with it, just beating it into the ground.
Yeah. In the 70s, you've gone back to DC and you created Power Girl, a character whose origin was retconned and rebooted a lot of times. They say she was created to tease Marvel because they created Wonder Man, you had Wonder Woman, and then you created Power Girl as a response to Power Man Luke Cage.
No, it was, I wanted to do the Earth 2 Supergirl without doing the Earth 2 Supergirl. I wanted to do a different personality. I wanted to play around with her physicality, So I knew that I needed to change her name, and that was the name that I came up with. It wasn't about Power Man, Wonder Man, which had happened like a decade before.
The
So
60s.
it's silly.
Marvel believed that wrongly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's and she's had such a over 4 decades worth of viability, which heartens my heart. A lot of fans, a lot of reboots, a lot of explanations of her origin. They could have simply, when they merged Earth 1 and Earth 2, they could have just brought her over, and said she was from an alternate Krypton, and just left it at that. But no, they had to make it more. She's from Atlantis. She's from somewhere else. She's there. She's here. The one thing I would say about DC is that they never live things well enough alone. Marvel retains their continuity and finds ways to fix it and move it sideways. Like the Ben Reilly is a good example. Until they invented the multiverse, which actually they stole from DC, they had a lot of different ways to reboot their continuity without rebooting their continuity. DC would every 5-10 years reinvent itself with a new line of comics, basically replacing the old line and starting the numbering over again and over again and over again. It's like, give it a rest. At least that's my cranky old man opinion.
Yeah, a lot of fans think that way. I want to go back a little in time because we talked about Marvel complaining about Power Girl, and I remember Stan Lee, he did it at the time. When you first came to Marvel, Stan Lee didn't like your work at first, is it right?
Well, he was ambivalent about it. I did a Marvel writing test over 5 pages of Captain America by Gene Colan. And Roy liked it, and Stan looked at it and said, it's okay, it's all right. And Roy said, well, he writes fairly well for, a 16-year-old. And Stan said, well, can't we get someone who writes really well as a 21-year-old? By the time I was 21, I was writing Spider-Man. So let's, okay. But Stan saw my potential, and he deferred to Roy's judgment, and he eventually moved me on to Thor, and then Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. I mean, I ended up writing the premier books of the line that Stan had been writing. So I guess he trusted me after a while.
You wrote one of the best crossovers of all time, Superman versus Spider-Man. That's the Brazilian issue. This is from the early 90s, something like that.
That's great. I love seeing foreign editions of comics.
It was smaller than
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, he was that smaller size. Today, is the same USA size. But Superman vs. Spider-Man was one of the first collaborations between Marvel and DC. How much interference the companies had on your plots? I know they interfered a lot in Ross and Drew art. they did the same with your text?
There was no interference. Basically, each company, Stan and Carmine, neither one of them wanted to have their fingerprints on it. They were reluctant partners. So the agreement was that DC would provide the writer and Marvel would provide the artist. And Marvel would provide the consulting editor, which was Roy Thomas, my old buddy. Ross and I did the basic outline of the comic, and the approach was that this was going to be a fanboy comic, that we weren't going to try to make logical sense out of it. We were going to just have it, just do it. That was the attitude. Get it done. I mean, just fulfill all of our fantasies. And the one idea that I had about the balance was that it would be completely equal, that Ross and I would make sure that each character had the same amount of space, that it was fully balanced, including, the size of the panels, the number of double-page spreads, neither Superman nor Spider-Man was going to have an advantage. That's why we had Spider-Man power up, so that he could be more than a smear on the wall. It was deliberate. It was part of our consensus that was what we wanted to do. And Ross and I mean, the only thing that happened with Ross was that Neil Adams, without consulting anyone, he and Dick Giordano, Dick Giordano was inking the book, shared a studio. And when Dick wasn't really paying attention, Neil would redraw Superman's faces. Ross had drawn Superman. Talk about, Neil was always an arrogant guy. That was his modus operandi. But what a diss on a fellow artist, which, because Dick was inking it, it kind of looked like Dick's inking, and it seemed like a little heavy-handed, but we didn't realize that it was completely redrawn. But that was the only interference, and it was completely independent.
It's not a company thing.
Yeah, no.
He decided to do it.
Yeah, I didn't rewrite anything. Nothing was rewritten. It was the perfect collaboration because it lacked interference. I know that some severe continuity fans were really upset that there was no real explanation for how the two of them got together and how Metropolis and New York could be in the same universe, and all that nonsense. But literally, that was irrelevant. What we wanted to do was fulfill our fanboy expectations.
For me, this one is the best Marvel DC crossover ever. Let's talk about another crossover, but this one didn't happen the same way. Avengers vs. Justice League. I made some research about it, I made a video about it, and I learned people at Marvel were complaining at your script. They kept doing it until you quitted that job. And they kept fighting until the project was cancelled. How you felt about it and at that time, and how you feel now about this story we fans never could read?
Well, I was really disappointed that George Perez's art wasn't seen published because he did a wonderful job, which was we just, after back and forth, Dick Giordano decided he was just going to go forward with the project, and George ended up drawing almost 50 pages of it, which, is not, I mean, we didn't have royalties per se back then, but still, it was a big paycheck that he did get paid, but so disappointing that his art didn't get out there. And it was totally a vindictive act by Jim Shooter. He was determined to not allow a crossover, but it was contractually obligated, and he had approval, as did DC, over the plot. And it was ridiculous because I had written those characters. I had, as much of a right to have my interpretation of these characters as Jim, and it was a totally facetious act on his part. Sure. That's the truth of it, in my view. Jim probably has a different view.
You created a character I like a lot, Firestorm. I liked the Spider-Man feeling he had. He was a young boy, a young guy, joking all the time, like Spider-Man. He used to appear in the Super Friends cartoon. I watched it as a kid. But then they turned him into a serious guy in the comics. They merged him with a Soviet guy. That ruined the character for me.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think of this directly when I created the character. But I mean, obviously it was an outgrowth of Captain Marvel, like a reverse Captain Marvel. I'm talking about the Fawcett Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
It was kind of an archetype that was directly designed to appeal to young teenagers because it reflected their experience of the world. Figuring yourself out, you're going out into the world, and there's always parental figures hanging over your head, giving you unwanted advice, criticizing your behavior, second guessing you, all that stuff. That was the core of it. It wasn't the flames. Although that was cool, it wasn't the ability to change things. It was the dynamic between Ronnie Raymond and Professor Stein. And when they changed that, boom, it was gone. And every reiteration of the character that moved away from that just basically missed the point.
Yeah, I know Jonas Strander wrote those stories and I like a lot his work, but that one, I don't.
Oh no, it's like the book the book stopped after the elemental thing.
Yeah.
It became pointless. Just another superhero.
And they changed his looks also, and it was terrible.
Why? It's not like the book wasn't selling well. It was selling well when I left it. So what the heck? And he's a character that keeps being brought back because he sold well. But when they bring him back in the wrong way. They pair him up with another young man, or the whole point was Professor Stein.
When you created a character at that time, DC used to ask for a new character, or you pitched your idea to them?
How if we did that? Oh, okay.
Well, this was during a period when DC was offering a share in the ancillary profits. So, a 10% share, which was kind of meaningless because there was so little ancillary product. And then, of course, Super Friends comes out, and it's worth money. The toys come out. The idea was to get creators to create new characters, and so there were a flurry of proposals, and I lucked out with three of mine eventually, three being picked up at the time, and then two of them being imploded with or three of them being imploded with Cancel Comic Cavalcade. So I brought them back in other books, to try to keep interest in them. And I introduced Firestorm in Justice League. Then he got a backup in Flash. Then eventually I convinced them to give him his own book. And the same, Steel and Vixen didn't get their own books, but they did get more prominence. Like in Action Comics with Superman, Vixen appears as a mistaken villain, and so on.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of those characters you created, but we don't have the time to make questions about all of them. I'll just say their names, and you tell me what you think of them now, or some memory about their creations, okay? Let's start with Vibe.
Sorry?
The Vibe was from
Vibe.
Detroit.
That was a bit of a misstep. My intention was to, and I did, create the first Hispanic superhero. But I fell into the trap of being a white guy who had no real idea of Hispanic culture in America. I went for the cliches rather than authenticity. That said, I think his power was pretty cool, vibrational, hence Vibe. But I wish that I had developed his character more.
Detroit Justice League was cool. I like that period.
Thank you. I got a lot of heat for that.
Some people don't like it, but I think it was a...
Oh yeah, it was reprinted in a omnibus, so I guess I must have done something right.
About Vibe, we Brazilians have problems to relate to those Latin characters because we speak Portuguese. Our culture is very different. Even when they did Brazilian characters, they looked a little as Mexican characters. But it's changing. As we become more global, this is changing. About Gypsy.
Gypsy had a lot of potential. I was going to develop her more. I had a whole arc for her that I was planning on when I left the book.
Killer Croc.
Killer Croc, my most successful character in ancillary products, thanks to the Batman animated show, where he was really developed visually. I like Killer Croc. I like the variations on him. I think they've done an amazing job bringing him out.
He's very cool. Jason Todd.
My intentions were good, but my goal was to create a Robin to replace Dick Grayson, because he was getting a lot more play in Teen Titans, and I felt it wasn't really working contextually, that you couldn't really have Robin as a sidekick in Batman, because he was almost 20, in both Batman and Teen Titans, and he looked silly in the green and yellow outfit. So Marv and George created Nightwing, and I created Jason Todd. The plan was to have a really young kid in the Dick Grayson mold, but my major misstep was patterning him too closely to a young Dick Grayson. That said, the development of the character after his death, quote, quote, really has expanded the possibilities. And of course, now we have Red Hood, which takes him into a whole new direction. I'm sorry, is Red Hood Jason Todd now?
Yes, he's. I guess, I don't know, but I don't read recent material anymore. I would prefer he remain dead. Sorry, who likes this new Red Hood. It doesn't mean I don't like the character, but I like a lot his development until he dies, and when they bring him back, I don't like it.
I left the character after like 3 or 4 issues.
Yeah.
I think did Doug Munch take it over?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. When I leave a character or a book, I tend not to follow it because I just don't want to get it into my head. I don't want to second guess the writers, who follow me. I want to respect their vision and just move on.
And last but not least, Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel.
I remember being given the assignment or taking the assignment to create Miss Marvel by Stan, because he felt that we needed a female superhero, that She-Hulk was not doing it, or maybe she came later. I don't remember. To lead her own book, that she needed to come along and have the Marvel name in the character. So Ms. Marvel was, the logical name at the time, given the culture. And then I had to very quickly come up with a version of Captain Marvel that was female and green and yellow costume from the original Captain Marvel, and kind of followed the pattern of the developed Captain Marvel. So that led me to the question, well, where does she get her powers? What if she got them from Captain Marvel? Well, who could get them from Captain Marvel? Well, Carol Danvers could get them from Captain Marvel. Do I want her to be in the military where she was before? No, I don't. I want her to be in New York. How can I make that interesting? I'll have her personality change when she turns into Captain Marvel. That was pretty much it. Then I left it after 2 issues, and Chris Claremont took it over, and the rest is history. I really like what Kelly DeConnick did with the character. She took it into a major new place, and I respect that.
Yeah, that leads to my question. Some people criticized that first series because it was a feminist series written by men. But I understand it was a product of its time.
At the time, there were not a lot of women writing comics. Part of that was the boys' club. Part of that was interest in writing comics. And part of it was just taste, for comfort with guys, editors, not feeling comfortable working with women. So there was a certain amount of misogyny on that. But eventually, by the 2000s or 2010s, you had a much better mindset and more openness to female writers, because you had female editors, which really contributed a lot to the business. I mean, you can basically say that most of the really good comics being published today are edited or written by women.
I want to talk about something we Brazilians love.
It is Atari Force. I don't know.
Atari Force.
Atari Force.
We love this here in Brazil. I don't know how it is in the USA, but here in Brazil, people that grew up reading it in the 80s love this material. We want this back in a TPB or omnibus, but it's not possible now, right?
The rights are so convoluted. Although they all belong to Warner's. I don't know why. Well, I mean, it didn't sell that well. It lasted only 20 odd issues, I think. I mean, that team, we just meshed. We were at our creative peaks. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and I just hit the floor running on that book. Partially because when we got together in New York for a consult to create the book, I had a severe cold and I was doped up on cold medicine, and my head was like up here. I was, and I just said things, how about a giant baby? Let's do a giant baby. Let's do a sexy insect. So stuff like that. We were just spitballing the wildest ideas. Jeanette Kahn was part of it. And we made it happen. We made that team happen. And then, characters like Dart and Blackjack, it was wonderful. I mean, it was just great. A different view of space.
Some creators would like to know, what medicine was that?
It was just over the counter stuff that I took too much of. I was very dried up down here and completely stoned up here. Not the best way to do anything except maybe apparently create Atari Force or collaborate in creating.
And the fans in USA love this as we do here in Brazil?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
great.
I mean, I have one of the books I constantly get to be signed is Atari Force. People bring their 40-year-old Atari Force to me, and
there was a first series for the video game and then a second one, right?
Yeah.
But this we just read the second one. We didn't have the first.
That's okay. The first
better,
one,
right?
The first
better?
one, yes, the second one is definitely better. It's much more developed and much less white bread. The first one was designed for video game players. It was kind of light, not very inventive, just straightforward space adventure.
Last one. Some time ago in an interview you said superhero comics should be cancelled. I understand what you meant, that the format should change, right? The way they do things.
What I meant in terms of they should be canceled is give it a rest for a bit. Just give a breather. Back in the early 50s, superheroes went away for a while and came back with the Flash, and then came back with Green Lantern, and then came back with Atom, and then came back with Justice League, or something like that. I'm not sure of the order. So do it. Take a breather. Take a step back. Reconceive what you're doing, and start over. But really start over this time. No 52 reboots. No rebirths. No whatever it is they're doing now. Half measures won't do it. Just reinvent those characters. Create a new Flash that isn't like the old Flash, or the old Flash, or the old Flash, or the old Flash. You get what I'm saying? Reinvent those powers. Reinvent his home life. It's a different culture. Let's do a different thing. The 1960s are not like the 2020s. That's 60 years ago. It's not the same. When Julie Schwartz and Gardner Fox created, actually, it was Julie Schwartz and Robert Kanigher who did that first issue of Flash. They didn't go right back to the 1940s, which was only 10 years before. They went and they just started over.
Yeah.
It's time to start over.
Mr. Conway, it was an honor to talk to you, and I hope to see you in some months here in Brazil.
Thank you.
I'll be there.
Have a good winter.
Yeah, it's starting to get cold here, but it's a California cold.
Oh, that's healthy.
Pessoal, quer ter mais destaque aqui como fã do canal? Entra no nosso clube de membros. É só clicar no botão Torne-se Membro ao lado do botão de inscrição que eu te dou mais detalhes. Essa galera aqui tem vantagens exclusivas. Alguns ganham quadrinhos, vários estão num grupo em que a gente fica trocando ideias sobre quadrinhos. Todos eles têm tratamento diferenciado aqui no canal. Vai lá! Por hoje é só, nas próximas semanas, semana que vem tem a saga do Wolverine, preview das edições 7 e 8, termina a fase do Mark Teixeira e o Logan enfrenta o Sauron e um Sentinela. Depois tem autores Alan Moore, DC Finest, uma coleção de clássicos da DC que precisa vir para o Brasil, e em breve a HQ que eu li e o filme que eu vi, Superman. Até lá!